not yet live. Still spinning. There we go. Boom. Now I am live. Welcome. It's Tokyo tonight. It is 10:35 p.m. Japan Standard Time. On the day of the national election in Japan. And see if I can place the screen in the background so that you can sort of see what's going on. I'll try to update in the background as we go on through the live stream the results of the national election that was only announced 2 weeks ago and that happened basically up to today. Polls closed 2.5 hours ago at 8 p.m. And results should come in. They should be known really by morning. They'll be coming in through the night. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be more interesting than I thought it was going to be. Just for sort of an indication, if I expand this, I think it goes across the full screen. You can see here that this middle line, meaning the amount that you need to control Parliament, the current government coalition of Komeito and LDP had 233 seats. Sorry, they had 279 seats, and all the opposition combined had 186 prior. And so right now, this is the main house election of Parliament, and yeah, 135 to 157 confirmed right now, but with 173 more seats to go, it does look likely that the collective opposition looks like they're going to get over this middle line. The problem is that, of course, the opposition, you're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, actually, properly speaking, you've got the Conservatives, who probably would never support the left-wing opposition, and a racist party over here. So, and you've got independents who really shouldn't count. So you're really talking in fact, yeah, you've got the Constitutional Democrats, the Osaka, We Love Osaka Party, the Communists, the Democratic People's Party. They used to be together. They split. They used to be the Democratic Party, and they split. You've got the Reiwa Shinsengumi, the kind of insane young left-wingers party, the old-style Social Democrats. These 6 parties, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parties, altogether, the idea that they could form a government together in any way is unthinkable. In fact, Kokumin and Ishin are kind of right of center and might even prefer to make a government to actually support the LDP, which means either way, the result of this looks like highly likely to be a mess. And it also looks like, given how badly it looks like the LDP is going to go, the current leader, Prime Minister Ishiba, who's been Prime Minister for 2 weeks, has already talked that he might have to resign over this result. So you talk about the joke about what's her face in the UK, who lasted less long than than a bunch of lettuce that a newspaper put out. Literally, Ishiba might have one of the for a country that has lots of short-term prime ministers. Ishiba may be among the shortest. We may get Takaichi back as prime minister right after this. So it's an interesting night. So I am going to, of course, keep updates on that. Of course, there's been more than just this going on through the week. So I'm going to be updating on that. I've been a bit quiet on Twitter. I've had sort of a busy week. But before we do all of that, as we always do, let's go in and see who's in the comments. And DJ Sunnyside Up first, just straight in there as soon as I set this up. Part of the reason I set this up was I was catching up on news, and I realized sometimes if I put the notification, if I set up the stream less than 1 hour before the stream starts, people don't get notifications of it. So I always, so I was like at 9:33. That's partly why I set it up at 10:35. Also just gave me a little bit of extra time. But DJ Sunnyside Up, he always jumps on this. You're right in there. So thanks for that. Robert Brooker, first like. Thank you for the likes as well. Remember, that is all that I do it for. Christopher Luke got surprised Nomikai today. So yeah, I hope it was a welcome Nomikai, but that happens. Again, Nomikai sprung upon you, but all good. Lara is apparently with us in spirit, napping in the spa. Hope that you can make it, but sounds like you're in a better place. We've got Kerberos Tenshi there, but no cookies, only coffee. Wow, you're really seriously down for the information today. You're just all coffee, no cookies. I feel like that's something I want to use. It's like, yes, I'm here for this meeting. I'm all coffee, no cookies. Although cookies also do help. So anyway, Shibas, surprise, Shibas, you made it here early. Coffee, kampai indeed. Kafai. Why did I say kafai? I'm speaking Maori now to everybody. Good to see you. Tudom, great to see you. Checking in. Great to have you in the chat as always. Dan H. Looks like Charlie Brown achieved his job if the exit polls are correct. If his job was losing the LDP's majority in Parliament, it looks like is that the job? Is that what you mean? I mean, I think his job was kind of to get the party through the election. I'll talk in a little while why I think he probably didn't achieve that. But I'm curious what you mean by that, Dan, if you could elaborate. I don't think he's done his job at all. I think he's about to be fired. I mean, to the extent that he's there to be the piñata for the LDP to sort of take all the abuse over all of the, the beating was always coming. Again, why anyone in the LDP thought that it was a good idea, to do a snap election within 2 weeks when they still had all of this, slush money scandal hanging over the party. And Ishaba himself said, it would be so stupid to do a snap election. No, I'm going to set up a track record and then have people vote on that. And then he changed his mind after he got the job and said, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. Let's just do a snap election, expecting a honeymoon, which there's no reason to expect. So I think he spectacularly failed, is my view. But, and we'll dig into that. Believe in yourself. Good to see you. We've got lots of people. Ida, good to have our person in from Denmark. Well, I've got everybody represented here. Do say hi if you haven't said hi yet. Who else have we got in here? We've got Boom. We've got Softy Papa, soon to be in Japan, soon to be on 2.5 Voyages. Thanks to everybody who came and joined 2.5 Voyages last night. The usual fun chaos. No, it was really good to get Victor on. We don't do that enough. Once a month is pretty good, though. And remember, I'm taking care of the Japan election tonight, but Victor and I will be back for 2.5 Voyages on November 9th, where we will be covering the then result of the US presidential election, if, of course, we and the rest of the world are still here at that point. So we'll see what happens. Odie Jr., great to see you, as always. Boom with the emojis. Alex, great to see you. Atomic Tom, listening on your way to the gym. I am here to pump you up. I hope that helps. Possibly doesn't. But great to have you in the chat, as always. And everybody else. We've got Moi. We've got Yoni from Finland in there. Moi, right back at you. Great to see everybody saying hi. So, let's do a quick refresh of the screen. How are we doing? The government, 136. The opposition, 160. So the opposition at the moment racing towards that middle line, and very much looks like the LDP is going to either need somebody in the opposition to come across to help them out, or, the opposition, particularly the CDP, has to win by such a margin that they can cut down the number of people that they'd have to do a deal with to take over the government. We'll see what the Asahi is saying. The Asahi being a little bit more conservative at this point, but 148 to 149 according to the Asahi, but according to NHK, they've got the opposition sort of storming through at the moment. So we'll keep posted on that through the evening. And let's jump into what was happening in the week. So over onto the Twitter side of the screen, hope that the 1080p broadcast is showing enough that you can sort of see. Maybe I can make this look a little bit bigger. Maybe I can do this. So as I said, while this whole thing, this is the main sort of projection being put out by TBS and Japan News Network at the moment, which says that the combined opposition looks like the result is going to be something like this. The top two being the current government. It looks like the main government party, the LDP, is going to lose 75 seats, going down to 181, and the main opposition party, the CDP, is going to increase by 61 up to 159. LDP will still be the biggest party, so it will still win in that regard. But Komeito, their government partner, is also going to lose seats. And the big winner, it looks like, is going to be the Democrats and the old Democrats, the Democratic People's Party, which are a more conservative version of the Democrats that split off because they didn't like who one of the leaders was going to be. Interestingly, the We Love Osaka party, which is just really a complete mess, the Ishinokai, they're going to lose 8 seats, but still be the third biggest party in parliament. And they're one of the parties which some people, including me, think would be a good candidate to come over and help out the government, the current government, to stay in power, because they're just pure sort of populist and right-wing. And there are some things, like, for example, on reforming the Constitution, or getting rid of the peace clause of the Constitution. These folks, Ishinokai, are all for it. So, it's actually, whereas the government coalition partner, Komeito, is not. So there was speculation before that actually, the LDP, when Abe wanted to reform the constitution, there was rumors that he might just dump his coalition partner and go along with the Ishin party. But, that didn't happen, and Ishin is all over the place, and they've said that they wouldn't join a government actually with the CDP or with the LDP. But they might be the kingmakers at the end of this. So these two parties are the really interesting ones to watch, and of course to see how many seats the LDP loses and how many seats the CDP wins. So interesting night. And with that, my comment was pretty astounding jump. A scenario where where basically, like I said, the DPP or the Ishin party could hold the balance of power. They could decide who they want to form a government with, which could decide who gets to be the government, which is a situation that happens all the time in New Zealand. You have these small parties that decide who's in power, not the big parties. Looks like we could be in a situation like that here, where these parties have disproportionate power. But that said, just if this is the scenario that plays out, the opposition just getting over the line by this much, it'd mean that all these parties would have to cooperate. And that would, if it's 257 to 250 to 208, you would need basically more than 40 seats. You could sort of dump 40 seats worth, so you could ignore the Rewa party and the socialists and so on. Maybe even the communists, but you definitely have to get all the big opposition parties together. So yeah, really interesting scenarios playing out here. And as this commentator, Rintaro Nishimura, who I lately follow, is pointing out, it's kind of damned if you do or damned if you don't. I mean, either way, teaming up with the LDP or the opposition trying to form a Super Friends coalition is clearly going to be a complete disaster. So it looks like Japan is indeed in for a bunch of chaos from this, but we'll see what happens anyway through the night. Let's refresh the screen again. 136 to 160 is now 137 to 162. So the opposition getting very close to the halfway line, which will signal chaos, which will be more fun. It will definitely also signal Ishiba almost certainly. Well, unless he can very quickly put together a coalition with one more party. But hard to see Ishiba surviving this. So yeah, interesting times. Aaron, glad that you made it, as always. And Sainted Sir, good morning, New York City. And everybody else, great to have you in here. So anyway, that's the current state of things. More into regular things. I went for a run during the week. I actually saw that Wild Llama, a runner who apparently runs all over Tokyo, he posted a tweet that he ran and arrived at my favorite little burger spot, the Naughty by Burger place in Gokokuji. So yeah, he posted a photo of that, and I went for a run and ended up there myself the next day. So we're going to do like a running hamburger date, meetup, whatever you call these things. It's going to be awesome. Sometime in November anyway. The owner, by the way, is a cool guy. I don't know. People ask you, what's going on with the face? It looks like he knows something that you don't. Which it does in the photo. He put that, I'm like, dude, I actually took the photo twice, thinking, was that on purpose? But it appears that it was. But he's a super cool guy. He's from Akita Prefecture. Uses only Akita ingredients, including like weird mountain vegetables and stuff that I've never seen before. This one has figs, and I'm not a fig fan. But in this, it works so well, and it's a gourmet specialist Akita ingredients burger place. Definitely after training, definitely not before. But yes, literally a burger run, literally run 6K. And when you're really dehydrated and tired after a run, the burger tastes so good. Like your body is sort of screaming for protein after exercise. So yeah, I'll do that sometimes. I'll go in, you sit like on a sort of stool at the counter there, and to have the burger like right after you've been for a good run is awesome, and they're very good burgers. So very much looking forward to doing that as a kind of a Tokyo runner meetup. If you're a runner in Tokyo and you want to meet up and have a burger at the end of it, yeah, I'm always posting my runs. I try to get out 3 times a week. I was supposed to run today, but I had a really lazy day today. So I'm letting my joints recover a bit. The old knees and feet are getting a bit sore lately from all the running. So I'm just giving a little bit of a break. I'll get back into it tomorrow. But yeah, that's the thing that's happening. Also yesterday, I went to go watch New Zealand play Japan at rugby. Really interesting. The biggest rugby ground in New Zealand, at least when I left, could only seat 45,000 people. Maybe they've upgraded it. Maybe it seats more now. But I was at Nissan Stadium in Kanagawa Prefecture near Shin Yokohama Station, and it sat, well, it wasn't sold out, but they sold more than 60,000 tickets, and they were expensive tickets. I mean, I was way up in the top row in the nosebleeds, and I had to spend 16,000 yen on my tickets. So not cheap. So, great payday for the Japan Rugby Union and the All Blacks, who are on their way to a tour in the UK, in Europe. Um, and yeah, Japan's been sort of getting stronger over the years, but they've got a new coach at the moment who I like. But part of his plan is to build up the team with lots of new players. So there's tons of new players who, are all learning the new playbook. So it's kind of experimental. So they're kind of asking to get their ass kicked. That said, New Zealand also sort of put out a bunch of players that they wanted to give game experience to, probably because they were expecting to win comfortably. So they thought, okay, we should get the win in this game, so let's try a bunch of new players. So, yeah, the game, it was 64 points to 19, I think New Zealand won. So New Zealand won super comfortably. As a New Zealand rugby fan, I won't go into the rugby detail of it, but I was a little bit frustrated just at the New Zealand had its issues that New Zealand traditionally is a team that overwhelms other teams and scores more and more points and accelerates through the games. We went on fitness and we went on scoring really cool, flashy running tries, and we score more and more at the end of the game. And lately, the last like 10 games under our new coach, we in the second half, we just like stopped scoring. So I was hoping for Japan, as much as I want Japan to do well, I like Japan, but I was really hoping that we would massacre Japan and that we would actually correct that issue and start really running away. And when we scored 50 points in the first half, hitting for a 100-point game, I was like, okay, great. But then we just like stopped scoring points. So 2 lucky tries right at the end of the game. So, I was expecting more of the New Zealand team, frankly. But yeah, great fun. Good to get out. One thing about Japan I don't like, actually, is a lot of these sports stadiums that they have are multi-purpose. They have these running tracks around them, which is great that you can have athletics events and, soccer games and rugby games and use them for all sorts of purposes. And I think there's something to do with government subsidies, that you can actually claim government subsidies if you build stadiums that are multi-purpose. But the result is there aren't many great stadiums where you can actually sit really close to a playing field, like the great sports stadiums in South Africa and Europe and so on. I'm sure it's the same in America with American football. You've got these stadiums that can pack 100,000 people in, and they're right. You can see the faces of the players. You're right on these steep stadiums. You're packed right up against the field. Whereas in Japan, all these stadiums, you sit really, really far away from the field, which is kind of okay, I guess, for rugby because, you can sort of see what's going on in the strategy across the field. But but still, it was a great day out. Also, just it is funny, in rugby circles in Japan, New Zealand is considered kind of a mythical team. So everybody who wasn't wearing a red and white Japan jersey was wearing a black clothes, which is what New Zealand fans do. Our uniform, we're called the All Blacks because our uniforms are just straight black shorts, black shirt. And all the Japanese who were not wearing red and white shirts were pretty much just wearing all black clothes because which is what New Zealand fans do. So it kind of felt a bit like a home game anyway. And I got lots of smiles and hand waves wearing my New Zealand Maori jersey to the game. So it was lots of fun. But yeah. DJ Sunny set up asking, am I watching the World Series? I'm following the World Series. I'm not watching it live. Dodgers. I mean, I'm in Japan, so that makes me an automatic Dodgers fan. And worried about Ohtani. Looks like he hurt his left shoulder or elbow or something today. That's a bit worrying. But absolutely, I'm just like every other. I'm not really a baseball fan. I'm not even really a Japanese baseball fan. But it's exciting following Ohtani get the 50-50 record and absolutely supporting the Dodgers in the World Series. So we'll see what happens. Of course, I know that now that the next couple of games are in New York, right? So New York should get a couple back, but we'll see what happens. But I think 2 games to go now to win. So hoping they get that. Dan H, didn't Charlie Brown join LDP split-off party as a youth? Yes, he did. He couldn't break it from the outside. He's been a sleeper agent trying to break it from the inside, trying to create a false narrative. I mean, that could be but Takaichi was in the same party, right? So, Junichiro Koizumi, so many LDP politicians have campaigned on, I'm going to destroy the LDP and reform it from the inside. And they just get elected and do what everyone does. And that's what Ishiba's playbook has been. He said every promise that he made in the LDP leadership election, he backed off on immediately, including like the disciplining all the corrupt politicians in the LDP and everything, which is why they're getting hammered in the election right now. Let's have a look, 137 to 162. We are now 140 to 165. So I think the opposition slipped there a little bit, actually, on the updated view. But in any case, the LDP is definitely doing badly. Asahi still showing 150 versus 150, so they're showing it as closer. But yeah, who knows? That could be it. I mean, I've always believed that the opposition was losing on purpose. I mean, so what do you do if both the government and the opposition are both trying to lose the election on purpose? And is the party that loses more the winner if they're both actually trying to lose? I don't know. This is, my brain starts to break at that point. But in Japanese politics, anything is of course possible. Back to the tweets. Boom. Oh, and somebody, I saw this. Somebody said, "Enjoy. My money's on Japan today." This was just before New Zealand scored 50 points in the first half. So I saw that. And my response was, so you're telling me that there's a chance? The game was already at that point when I saw the tweet. It was obviously not before the game. But yes, Flamestream. Nice to see a new handle name there in the chat. Thank you for saying hello. On the bright side, you're pretty happy that the loud megaphone moments are over. Yes, indeed. Well, they're over from the politicians. They're still there from the Yaki Imo sellers and the scammers who go saying that they're going to buy your used home appliances and stuff like that, but they're gone from the politicians. So yes, the loud megaphone trucks are, of course, part of the culture here, but what can you do? I am going to, I don't know if this pins the comment or not. I'm putting a little star next to this comment because do not neglect the like button. The like button definitely wants to be loved. Show it some love. It's, remember, these videos are not monetized. You're not seeing, well, if you're seeing annoying ads, they're not my fault. I didn't do it. So that's because I want you to just enjoy this. So yeah, definitely do hit the like button because that's all that I'm doing it for. Another really interesting graph that I saw today. This looks like a colorful mess, but this basically shows people in their 20s. Let me see if I can blow this up. This graph shows people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s and above, and it shows the sort of party affiliations. And what's interesting about this is that if you look at the dark red, that's the LDP. Most of LDP's support was traditionally, there's always been this image that young people support reform and, left-wing and liberal opposition, and old conservative people that are ruining the country are all supporting the LDP. But lately, youth-related trends are the opposite. The older you get, people in their 70s overwhelmingly support the CDP, and people in their 20s overwhelmingly support the LDP. And maybe this is where there's been like 24% turnout. For people from Australia, this might be shocking because Australia, like North Korea and most communist dictatorships, has mandatory voting. In Australia, you can be fined for not voting. Australia has a mandatory 100% turnout to any election, which I think is ridiculous because I think not voting is also a right. I don't think you should be forced to vote. It's something illegitimate countries tend to do. But in Japan, of course, they don't have mandatory voting, and only 24% of people show up, and that's a factor in in who wins. And traditionally, low turnouts, because old elderly people tend to show up more reliably to elections. Young people tend not to care or think they assume that their votes don't count, and they don't turn up. So traditionally, it's been to the advantage of the LDP to have a low turnout because that way only the religious cult members and elderly would show up and vote for them. Now those reliable elderly voters are showing up for the opposition, and the youth who don't show up, even though they'll say, I vote LDP in polls, but are not showing up and actually voting, they're all young people. So we've switched from a situation where I remember when Taro Aso was prime minister, and he was basically campaigning for people not to bother voting. He would say, yeah, as prime minister, he actually said at one time, yeah, if you're not sure who to vote for, just don't bother. I think you should just stay home unless you're really sure, which he was, of course, condemned for because, prime ministers are supposed to encourage people to get out and vote. But now it looks like that's the sort of opposition message. The fact that there's only a 24% turnout, a 3% less turnout than happened in the last election, seems to be actually working for the opposition. It used to be high turnout favored the opposition, but now it seems to low turnout favors the opposition, which is just a big change in Japan that's happened in the time that I've been here, which is interesting. Yeah, in other news from this week, let's just do a quick refresh. 165 to 140, still 165 to 140. Earlier in the week, a young American, an 18-year-old, on a tour of Japan with his parents, apparently went to Universal Japan Studios and Disneyland, and was on his last day in Japan and thought it would be a really good idea to set 7 fires in a really narrow area near where he was living. He was set on fire rubbish bins and so on. And he got caught and he was arrested. And he's 18 years old, so he was put in jail on the day that he was supposed to fly back to America. I do remember there was a kid a kid. He's not really a kid, is he? 18 years old. There was a similar case of an American in Singapore who was caught spray painting cars like 20 years ago, and he was given the cane. And I remember it was a big topic in America because Americans overwhelmingly supported this American brat getting caned by a foreign government. Japan, I haven't heard anything other than he missed his flight back to America because he's been jailed for arson. I imagine because he's American, there may be. I mean, if the State Department says, "Hey, just scare the kid a bit, and make him pay for a ticket home," that could well happen. He could well be let out with a slap on the wrist, especially given that I think these were rubbish bin fires. But I hope he gets Japan's justice system has its problems, but I hope that this person experiences all of them. The long detentions, the questioning, everything else. It is crazy. All these fires, basically in different parts of Osaka. In fact, no, I'm sorry. This was in Tokyo. He was in, why did I say Osaka? I saw Sumida and I thought for a moment Osaka, but no. He was in Shitamachi in Tokyo. But he set these fires just sort of going all over the place. And again, 18 years old to an adult, but with his parents. So still, please don't come to Japan if you're this kind of a dickhead. And what can happen? Well, this person can be detained for months, weeks, without access to a lawyer. Basically, your interrogators get to dictate your sleep and your food. Then it takes about a year before they'll go to trial if they decide to charge you. And given that they caught him in the act, it seems to me that they've got enough evidence to prosecute. So, and I imagine, of course, being a tourist, he's gonna be in for a really tough time if they don't decide to go soft on him and let him quietly go. I haven't heard any updates on this, but don't be this person, please. So that is the thing that happened. Isn't the age in Japan adult to become an adult 20? They've just reduced it. I think this year they actually reduced it from 20 to 18. So now 18-year-olds can vote in Japan. Not for drinking though. For drinking is still 20. So they haven't lowered the age of drinking, but they've lowered the age of criminal responsibility. In fact, that's right. Japan until recently had 20 years for everything. But now they're sort of, for things that require, as people are commenting there, that's right. But the actual age of criminal responsibility was actually reduced. Also for the ability to make contracts. And this was a problem because there was actually a thing where people under 20 years old were not able to have rental store memberships or anything like that because they weren't considered adults able to sign contracts. Their parents had to do it. So it allows people who are living independently at 18 to now be adults. But it also means that you definitely go straight to jail. If you go setting fires all over the place, in which case the dictator of Venezuela from the meme skit is absolutely right with the solution to this problem. Marcos Fernandez, good to have you in here. Good evening. Interesting times in the world, including North Korea, of course, now mounting an invasion of Europe. North Korean troops now clearly engaged in hostilities against the second biggest country in Europe, helping Russia attack it, which is insane. However, very interesting situation arising from this. I saw a really interesting video this week clarifying South Korea has been deliberately not participating or supporting Ukraine because Russia has threatened that if South Korea, which has a huge arms industry, supports Ukraine along with Japan and everyone else in the world, Russia will retaliate by providing North Korea with advanced missile and weapons technology for it to use against South Korea. So South Korea was like, okay, we're only going to provide bulletproof vests and helmets and non-lethal assistance. However, now that there are actually North Koreans now confirmed fighting, and almost certainly Russia's giving them missile technology and drone technology and stuff in exchange for this, it turns out that South Korea actually has 3 million shells that are compatible with the artillery pieces that Ukraine has in its old Cold War equipment that actually South Korea is replacing with more modern shells of a different specification. So it's got all this sort of 3 million shells. Russia uses something like 200,000 shells in Ukraine every month. South Korea has 3 million shells that are compatible with Ukrainian equipment that it's basically replacing with NATO and US compatible standard equipment that they need to get rid of. And America said, okay, well, we'll just buy it from you, South Korea, and we'll give it to the Ukrainians. So you don't even have to give it directly to them. And South Korea has been reluctant to do it. But now that Russia's having North Korean troops help it to invade Ukraine, it seems a pretty obvious, easy thing to do and it actually get South Korea some money back for its equipment for its ammunition, which is no longer compatible with its with its current modern military equipment. So again, it's such a weird just the fact that we're in a situation like this where Iran and North Korea and Russia are kind of helping each other to invade a European country. And the consequences of that, including, just the fact that it might change the balance of power on the Korean Peninsula. Just the fact that also in the last couple of weeks, North Korea said, okay, we're not going to try to be friends with South Korea anymore. Probably they're getting help from Russia now that they feel like, oh, maybe we can get in the front foot and we can push things. So it's upsetting all sorts of things, which again is to me why you can't just let this go and why the outcome of the American election is so important for all of this. So it does sound like World War III, and everything kind of is dominoes against each other, definitely. Lysander 45, glad that you could make it. To quote the Truman Show, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Yes, indeed, good to have you in here. We gladly embrace the help of South Korea. Western Europe is kind of in a bad military state. Yes, indeed, not really able to produce enough to help Ukraine alone. Certainly, I mean, if there's a good thing about the Ukraine, it's like the Great East Japan earthquake was a terrible thing. It was kind of good in the sense that it woke up Tokyo, that it needs to get ready for having the same earthquake happen here. And definitely, it was the invasion of Ukraine is definitely a wake up for Western Europe that it had kind of fallen asleep. I mean, Trump was kind of right that Western Europe had kind of fallen asleep at the wheel of defense. Right? They were underspending. They weren't they were letting all of their equipment fall out of date and so on. And they got a needed wake up from this invasion. It's good that Western Europe is responding, but you're right, they don't have enough. And South Korea could really actually help a lot with this. So it really does actually change the game. And of course, another topic I'm not going to go into any depth on, but of course, Israel retaliated against Iran. Hopefully that's the end of that cycle. But, there again, until the Israeli hostages are released from Gaza, the war in Lebanon and the hostilities with Iran and the invasion of Gaza are going to be sort of ongoing. So unless it's good to hear that peace talks look like they're going to resume in Qatar soon. But also kind of glad to hear on the one hand, I mean, Iran, again, what's Iran doing helping Russia and invading Ukraine and doing all this sort of stuff as well? And it kind of helps everyone out in a way when Israel goes and disables the facilities that enable Iran to go and supply these other groups and so on. But at the same time, it would be good for everything to sort of calm down. So we'll see what happens. Optimistic. Am I optimistic? I want everything to stop. But I can't see that happening soon. Interesting one here. Watami. I talked about Watami years ago. Watami is a member of the LDP. He's a member of parliament. He's also like a mega rich owner of restaurants in Japan, including the Watami restaurant chain, which became famous for being a restaurant that had such terrible working conditions that it's, minimum wage restaurant workers. It's a nice izakaya restaurant. It has a reputation of being sort of upper middle class, sort of, like a kind of fancy-ish place where you could go have a business dinner. But they were working their staff to death and not paying overtime on minimum wage jobs where they were working people to death. And, multiple people dying working in his restaurants led to them needing to change the name of the restaurants. The holding company is still Watami Holdings, and he is somehow still sitting in parliament. But he's like famous as one of the most, kind of became famous as this textbook villain, abusive employers in Japan, who actually himself would sort of sing the praises of, learn how to work until you're dead. At my place, working until you're in hospital is just a sign that you're a good person, and that's what we try to teach all of our workers to do. Kind of bragging about his abusiveness. This is going back, geez, how long ago? 5 or 6 years, maybe more now. So anyway, it turns out that Subway, a food chain also known with association with negative associations. I think Jared, who I believe turned out to be a pedophile or something, who was the main spokesman of Subway. Why they even needed that in the first place, I don't know. And of course, I'm not saying that people who work in Subway are like Jared or anything like that. But anyway, two companies with bad PR decided to get married. I don't know if that like cancels out, if that's like two stars, exploding stars colliding and then no longer exploding. I don't know what happens with that, but it seems that Subway, they have 500 Japan stores, but it's fallen on hard time. Oh, it used to have 500 stores, and you're right, I haven't seen one anywhere near where I go lately. And even when I've seen one, I don't really feel very motivated to go have one, honestly. 178. So Watami's taking them over, and Watami wants to boost it to 3,000. Well, they can't have 3,000 Subways if all the staff are dead. I don't know how that works over 20 years. The same as McDonald's. I mean, no, Subway's not that good. It's okay. There are worse things than Subway, but I don't know. Would you want there to be more Subways than McDonald's? I'm not sure. And under Watami, so all of that stuff. Cobra Senshi asking, does Aaron book rental cars? It just caught my eye because Aaron does not, although you book limos. That's good to know. Maybe I should get one of those sometime. Rental cars are pretty easy to get in Japan. Nippon Rent-A-Car, all the big rental car companies do have places near big train stations and stuff. My advice is if you get a rental car, do not rent a car. Do not drive in Tokyo. But the moment you get like properly out of Tokyo to anywhere, getting a train to the place and a rental car from the train station where you arrive is a great way to travel around in Japan. But yeah, not sure how I feel about Watami taking over Subway. I don't really care for either. But this was hilarious. This has to be a troll. I assume everybody's seen this video and knows what I'm talking about here. There are subtitles on here so you can see. This guy, he's been living in Japan a long time, and this Lawson's one of the worst places. By the way, the subtitle says Lawson. He totally calls it Larson. He calls Lawson Larson, like clearly Larson. So he's complaining that they insist there's a foreigner at the counter, and he insists on speaking Japanese. And when I ask him, why are you speaking to me in Japanese and not English? The guy responded, Koko wa Nihon, because this is Japan. And you know that I don't speak Japanese, so speak to me in English. Like, these Larsons where everybody, first rule of complaining about English is that you need to use English correctly yourself first. And when you read the Lawson sign as Larson, you've got no right to demand that anybody inside speak your language. But yeah, a guy who claims to be a long-time resident of Japan, who doesn't speak Japanese, first minor flag, going to a convenience store, seeing a foreigner who's most statistics say is like 95% certain to not be from an English-speaking country, and to get upset that a foreigner that it could be from Peru, could be from Nepal, could be from Vietnam, could be from China, could be from whatever, complaining that they don't speak English to you in a convenience store. This is Japan. You speak Japanese as a lingua franca. So yeah, just this guy expressing outrage out in front of a Larson. I don't know. The first rule of complaining about English is that you should speak it correctly first. And yeah, this Lawson's one of the worst when I go out. I don't know. So indeed, don't be this guy. Don't be this guy. Learn a little bit of English and learn a bit of Japanese. Also, even myself, I do know when you first get to Japan, you can be really self-conscious speaking Japanese with other foreigners. It feels a bit wrong because we're all used to English, as English speakers. People watching this, I assume, are mostly people who can speak English. And even those who don't, the fact that you're watching this in English is probably, I learned Japanese properly. I have a degree in Spanish. I make effort with foreign languages. So I'm not taking for granted English's status, but it's true that that often when you have someone from Europe traveling in Asia, whatever, English just is the first middle language that people check that people can have. But that said, English has that. But that said, when you're in a country, the first language that you check, and you have to understand that, at least within Japan, or to be offended by somebody who's probably not an English speaker in Japan not speaking English is kind of stupid. So don't be this guy. All these things. And of course, the thing is, some of the worst speakers of English, one thing that kills me is how Scandinavians, so Ida, I include you in this, obviously, Denmark. Scandinavians speak and write better English than people from England. People from England, you can always tell someone's from England because they misspell everything. I mean, not always. Not all English people like this, but a lot of British people online speaking and writing have terrible English, and Scandinavians have like textbook perfect. I mean, you almost know that they're not English when you meet a Scandinavian because their English is like too tidy. Their English, Swedish people's, English is literally like an IKEA store. Everything's just laid out and orderly and organized. You talk to someone from, north of England, it's like, good God. So anyway, that was a funny video that went viral. Yes, election predictors. It turns out Japan is finally going to restart its first nuclear reactor. It looks like Onagawa number 2 is going to resume on October 29. I've said my view on this before, that I actually think we should be, in spite of having the risk of another nuclear accident, until we have non-carbon alternatives to nuclear power, given how crazy climate change is. And just look at this year. I mean, of course we have El Nino, of course we have the heat island effect in Tokyo, but still, global climate change is an indisputable thing that is happening. And until we have other solutions, one of the main causes of climate change is energy production, and nuclear, for all of its problems, doesn't add to that. It has its issues, but until we have other solutions, we should be turning all the nuclear plants back on, providing that they meet the new safety criteria, which most of them now do. It's just generally now local opposition to turning them on. But we should be doing that. So I'm glad to hear that they're turning the nuclear power plants back on. The mention of England reminds me of my love of dry English wit. In New Zealand as well. Most of the comedy that we Blue Shift. Terribly offended Brit here. You look the same after 10 years. You look the same after 10 years. Good to see you, Blue Shift. Long time no see. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to. I'm only speaking to you if you're one of the Brits who can't put a coherent sentence with no grammar or spelling mistakes together, which does seem to be a high percentage. And by the way, I accept that even as New Zealanders. But what shocks me is that it seems even higher in the home of English, But there you go. Edo, we watch a lot of American entertainment with subtitles. English is learned first grade, and being small countries, you need a second language for anything more than 200 kilometers away. I get it. But like I say, it's pure respect I have for the Nordic countries, that you learn our language better than we do. It's kind of embarrassing, but there we go. Defunct channel name says TEPCO is dangerous. Oh, so is climate change. And I honestly, if I was to accept, as someone who lives in the TEPCO area, I would rather take Onagawa number 2 than climate change deniers as a source of danger. So that's where I am. But and honestly, all the stuff about TEPCO, a lot of that is still, a lot of the hysterics, the anti-nuclear hysterics, most of what people predicted, including Tokyo being uninhabitable, everybody having, what do they call it? Not lymph node, but the things back here, having cancer, increased cancer rates and all this sort of stuff. All the stuff that people said, that the anti-nuclear folks said, that TEPCO's lying, that everyone's going to get sick and die, didn't happen. The liars were not TEPCO. The liars were the anti-nuclear people. And they don't care, because they consider that they were having an informational war where it was more important to win than it was to tell the truth, and that's why I got no time for them. But yeah, TEPCO has its issues, but not on the scale that people who were railing against it at the time of the accident say. Is my view on that. Geroid Reedy, a few people say this, how Japan shouldn't be increasing immigration and following Western countries. Japan's been increasing immigration for ages. I've seen it happen. It used to be I used to see a gaijin and go, oh, gaijin. Now there's like gaijin. Like you're around Tokyo, literally you throw a rock, you hit a gaijin, and then without even aiming. You used to have to aim, but now you don't even have to aim. You just throw a rock. They're everywhere. You go. I bought my new running shoes in Harajuku, and I saw the New Balance shop was at the end of Takeshita-dori, the main, which is now like Kyoto or the Sensoji in Akasaka. It's one of the completely crushed with tourists, like no-go places. And I was thinking, geez, I do not want to walk down bloody Takeshita-dori for these shoes. So okay, I'm going to go on a weekday. I'm going to go at lunchtime when it's going to be less crowded, and I'm going to go around the long way. I'm not going to go down Takeshita-dori. But I got there and I saw that it saves like 10 minutes to walk down that road. So I did it. But damn, yeah, there are a lot of foreigners now. So yeah, foreigners have definitely increased, and those are tourists, of course, that I'm talking about. But definitely foreign residents have gone from being an oddity. You go into a restaurant, people worry if they have to get a fork for you or not, even in Tokyo, to now being completely normal. The number has gone up to 3 million residents, and in terms of workers, up to nearly 2 million from a base you can see here of 500,000, and even lower. Like I got here 10 years before this. So it's definitely increasing. So this idea that Japan suddenly has gone from like banning foreigners and banning Islam and all these weird memes that people, anti-immigration people, cite Japan as an example of their ideal country, have never been true. They've never been true. And, particularly under Abe, I mean, look at these years where it jumped up. This is all Abe stuff. It was going up, and under the Democrats between 2009 and 2012, it was kind of flat. And then under Abe, completely shot up. So Japan is becoming more diverse with people who work and live and pay taxes here, and that is a good thing. So good point, well made there. Novolitas, good to have you in here, Novolitas. Hello, nice to see you as always. Mass migration is a big country killer. I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, mass migration made Australia and America. America is the best example of mass migration being a big country former. I mean, if it wasn't... I'm sure Native Americans have a problem with mass migration, but Canada, think about the countries that were formed through mass migration. South Africa, Australia. Australia, people would say nowadays, is a desirable country to go to. Canada, America, some of the most popular countries in the world to go to. Brazil, all of South America, pretty much all of North America. The entire New World is based on mass migration. It didn't go very well for the people who were there, for the indigenous people, true. And also, Japan doesn't have mass migration. Japan has controlled, needed immigration, which is not replacing declining population. So, yeah. I mean, immigration, if it's immigration out, that definitely kills countries, and that's happened. But yeah. Mass migration from different cultures. Well, again, America was absolutely that, right? I mean, and even remember, like for example, America was more than 30% of the people coming were Germans, for example, like in the 19th century. They weren't all coming from England. So again, I'd say that history shows in the New World, and you look at like Argentina and Brazil, they weren't all coming from Portugal and Spain. Argentina, they're all coming from Italy. They're different cultures. So I don't know. I'd take that debate up, but I get it. There's tensions at the moment in Europe that there's a sense that there's uncontrolled immigration from Middle Eastern countries and so on, and that's caused, friction and so on. And I think that the issue there is not so much perhaps the numbers or even where they're coming from, because again, there's always been reasonable immigration from different cultures. It's just that it's not being managed, I think, is the problem. And Japan is completely managing immigration, completely managing the numbers and where they come from and stuff like that. But they're also quite accepting, for example, Muslims from Indonesia in huge numbers, and it's going really well. So I don't buy into these arguments about like in religions inherently being problems or different cultures inherently being problems, but you do have to manage it, and you do have to make sure that people integrate. Absolutely. Look at me. I'm here. I learned the language. I'm not the culture. I'd like to think I'm helping. But sure, I get unmanaged immigration. Sure, that doesn't work out well for the people coming in or the people there. So yeah, there's uh, stuff to debate there, but certainly. Anyway, yeah, this is also, if you watch Lymphamy, which you should all watch Lymphamy. Aaron watches Lymphamy. Be like Aaron. Lymphamy is one of the best YouTube channels out there. He's done a couple of series, including, I think he posted a summary lately of his descriptions of the Mongolian invasions of Japan, which might sound boring, but the way that he talks about it, you laugh through the entire thing. Kublai Khan just getting ghosted, and every time he sent messages, well, instead of ghosting, he would like chop off the messengers' heads and send them back from Japan. And him getting all upset by it. But yeah, the accounts, and also why Japan was just Japan was actually invaded by the Mongolians. That the divine wind did not just the second invasion totally hit a typhoon and got blown away, but the first invasion, they landed in Fukuoka and they just like hung out in Fukuoka for a few months until they got bored. And the samurai that came up, they were supposed to like fight in an organized way against the Mongols, but they didn't care. All they had to do was chop off a couple of heads and show that they had chopped off some heads, and they get some prize money. And so then they'd just screw off as soon as they chop off somebody's head. So these samurai would kind of show up, chop off someone's head, and say, "Okay, I'm peace out." And the Mongolians were sort of sitting there like, "What the hell?" And they left. So proof that they actually did just hang around in parts of Fukuoka and northern Kyushu for a few months. Like, we're talking nearly 1,000 years ago now. They are finding proof now. They're finding all these Mongolian boats, which were, by the way, I mean, Mongolian boats. Think about Mongolia, not a big seafaring nation. They were using mainly riverboats from Chinese and Korean people that could barely get across the Sea of Japan. And once they arrived, they would just sink because they weren't very seaworthy. And they're finding all this evidence now, which is totally cool. But it's more cool if you go watch Lymphamy and go subscribe to him, because he makes an awesome YouTube channel. And yeah, when you realize just how ridiculous the whole situation was, of basically, the Mongols kind of like not just wanting Japan to, I mean, not quite as funny as the Romans, like throwing their swords into the ocean to defeat Neptune, instead of going and invading the UK, but something like that. The Mongols sort of, a couple of half-hearted attempts at invading Japan, and it was just more trouble than it was worth. But you should go watch his video about it. The sumo wrestling. The sumo wrestling invasion of Japan from Mongolia, highly successful. Asa Shoryu, absolute legend. So yeah, all of that stuff, absolutely. Yeah, they've been definitely more successful at the end. I've talked about Munio Suzuki, the pro-Putin member of the LDP who was kicked out for going to Russia. So he joined the Osaka First Party, who then kicked him out for going to Russia. No, sorry, he was in the LDP. He was kicked out for criminal corruption, including embezzling money from for overseas aid projects to Russia. Then he joined the Ishin Party, which kicked him out because he was so pro-Putin. So now he's taking revenge by going to Osaka and campaigning for the LDP against the Ishin Party. So he's campaigning for a party being beat up for corruption, even though he himself has been criminally convicted of being a corrupt LDP politician, against the We Love Osaka Party in Osaka. Yeah, I don't know. He should just be in jail. That would just solve everything. That's where he really belongs. There are things about, while former Prime Minister Taro Aso is considered to be in some ways the worst Prime Minister of Japan ever, there are moments that I like him, including moments where he jokes, for example, that it's safe for him to speak here in Molotov in Chiba because nobody in the audience looks strong enough to throw a Molotov cocktail at him. I mean, he's from the mafia capital of Japan. He's from northern Kyushu. And I do, there's something about, he's just a mischievous old man. But the fact that he says this sort of thing all the time, there's a limit to how much I can hate him. He is outrageous. I really like him more if he wasn't an actual politician. But the fact that he says he really appreciates this audience because no one looks strong enough to throw a Molotov cocktail at him. I mean, Chiba, if you ever heard about whatever happened with the construction of Narita Airport, those old people can throw Molotov cocktails pretty well. Trust me, he's not in a Molotov cocktail free, territory. But there again, he's from a place where the mafia attacks civilians with hand grenades, like within the last 10 years. So, I guess he would be probably man enough to throw it back. So anyway. Taro Aso. The rugby, that was the result, 64-19. It's kind of weird. It sounds a bit snobby as a rugby fan to say, yeah, should have been a bigger score. I'm disappointed with the 64-19 massacre, but really, New Zealand should have put on 100 points in that game. And honestly, I think we should replace a bunch of the players from it, but we'll see what happens. And I think that's the end of it. Oh yeah, final story for the day. Don't be this foreigner. Apparently a foreigner mistakenly showed up and voted in Ayase in is it northern Tokyo or southern Chiba? Anyway, it's north of, up there in Tokyo. Apparently he showed up, a poll worker, assumed that the foreigner who just checked the foreigner's birth date, and obviously not his entire name, saw someone else with the same birth date was registered to vote at that booth and handed him a voting paper and let him vote. The real registered voter showed up later on and voted. So the old illegals are showing up and voting. It's happening in Japan. It's happening in Japan. Who knows how we got here? Geez, I don't know. Maybe I should roll the dice and find out if I get a free extra vote at my polling booth. Don't do that. It's illegal. It's against the law. Don't do it. But it's kind of funny. Yeah. I don't believe the old illegals are voting and are eating the pets stuff. But there again, the fact that this actually happened and someone got caught in Japan, I find to be kind of more funny than disturbing. But also, don't be that guy. Don't set fires. Don't drive Mario Karts, and don't vote unless you become a Japanese citizen and are allowed to. Tokyo After Party is about to start. I'm going to be playing your requests as I always do on Sunday nights. No drum and bass tonight, Aaron. Don't worry. Maybe a little bit. You never know. I mean, you can't take the drum and bass out of me. It's always in there screaming to come out. But it'll mostly be your requests. So yeah, don't eat anyone's pets. Be good. We'll find out. Final check on the election result. How are we doing? 153 to 179. Okay, so actually LDP, the government's doing better than expected, but still definitely the opposition there in the lead. Breaking away on this one, 169 to 159. But yeah, it'd be very interesting to find out what sort of government we have tomorrow. It's going to be a mess, probably either way. So come watch next week for more of that. And remember, follow me on all the things, mainly Instagram and Twitter lately. And always remember, if you're ever in Tokyo and you want to hit me up for lunch or something like that, want to go for a run, always up for that. So yeah, have a good week, everybody. Stay safe. Don't eat your pets. Don't vote unless you're actually legally allowed to vote. And boom, peace. Hang around for the after party. Any string.